The clock on the kitchen wall showed 9:47 p.m. when the knock came. Alex had just settled into his favorite spot on the couch, a half-eaten pizza slice in one hand and the TV remote in the other. His small apartment felt bigger these days, too. Big for just one person, but he was getting used to the quiet. 6 months. That's how long it had been since everything changed. 6 months of learning how to cook for one, how to watch movies without someone commenting on every plot twist, how to fall asleep without the sound of another person breathing beside him. Some days were harder than others, but tonight had been okay. Just another Tuesday evening in his new normal life. The knock wasn't loud, but it cut through the sound of the TV like a knife. Alex paused mid-chew. Nobody visited him this late. His friends always texted first, and his family lived 3 states away. For a second, he wondered if he had imagined it. Maybe it was just the upstairs neighbor dropping something heavy again. But then it came again. 3 soft knocks, careful and hesitant. Alex muted the TV and walked to the door, pizza forgotten on the coffee table. Through the peephole, he could see a familiar figure standing in the hallway. His heart did that stupid thing it always did, when he saw her unexpectedly, jumping like he was 15 again instead of 28. It was Lily. Her long brown hair was darker than usual, soaked from the rain that had started an hour ago. She stood with her arms wrapped around herself, shifting her weight from one foot to the other the way she did when she was nervous. Even through the tiny peephole, he could see that her usual bright smile was nowhere to be found. Alex's hand froze on the door handle. They hadn't talked in almost a month, not since that awkward conversation at the coffee shop downtown, where they both pretended everything was fine while carefully avoiding eye contact. Before that, it had been weeks of short text messages and missed calls, the kind of slow fade that happens when 2 people don't know how to be around each other anymore. They had been best friends for 7 years. 7 years of inside jokes, late-night phone calls, and knowing each other's coffee orders by heart. 2 of those years had been something more, something that felt like forever until it suddenly felt impossible. Now they were stuck in that strange space between friendship and strangers, where every interaction felt like walking on glass. But seeing her standing there, looking smaller than he remembered, Alex couldn't think about any of that. She looked lost, and that wasn't like Lily at all. She was the person who always had a plan, who could find her way out of any situation with a smile and a clever joke. She was sunshine in human form, his mom had always said. Alex turned the locks and opened the door. Up close, he could see that her mascara had smudged slightly under her eyes and her clothes were damp from the rain. She looked up at him with those green eyes that had always been able to see right through him. "Hey," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know it's late. I know we haven't really been talking, but I didn't know where else to go." The words hit him harder than they should have. Lily had family in town, plenty of other friends who would welcome her with open arms. The fact that she had chosen his door, his apartment, meant something. Or maybe it meant nothing and he was reading too much into it like he always did. "It's okay," Alex said, stepping back automatically. "Come in. You're getting soaked out. There." She walked past him into the apartment, bringing with her the smell of rain and that vanilla perfume she'd worn for as long as he'd known her. The scent filled the small space immediately, making it feel less empty than it had moments before. Lily stood in the middle of his living room, looking around like she was seeing it for the first time. Everything was exactly where it had always been when they were together, except now there were more takeout containers and fewer plants. The bookshelf still held her favorite novel on the second shelf, the one she'd read to him during that summer when he had pneumonia. He'd never moved it. "I'm sorry," she said, turning to face him. "I should have called first. I should have asked if it was okay. She trailed off, running a hand through her wet hair. "You don't need to apologize," Alex said, closing the door behind her. "You never need to apologize for coming here." The words came out more honest than he'd intended, carrying weight from all the months of carefully measured conversations and polite distance. For a moment, they just looked at each other, and Alex remembered what it felt like when things were simple between them. "Are you okay?" he asked. because that seemed like the most important question. Lily's shoulders sagged a little, like she'd been holding them up for too long. I had a job interview today, the one I told you about last month, at the marketing firm downtown. Alex nodded. He remembered her mentioning it in passing during one of their brief text exchanges, back when they were still trying to maintain some version of normal friendship. It was a disaster, she continued, sinking down onto his couch without being invited. I mean, a complete disaster. I forgot half the things I wanted to say. I spilled coffee on my portfolio, and I'm pretty sure I called their biggest client by the wrong name. Twice. Alex almost smiled. Lily was many things, but clumsy wasn't usually one of them. She was the type of person who could juggle 3 conversations, 2 coffee cups, and a phone call while walking in heels. Seeing her rattled was like seeing a cat that had forgotten how to land on its feet. I'm sure it wasn't that bad, he said, settling into the chair across from her. It was worse, Lily said with a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. And then on the way home, my sister called about the wedding drama again, and my mom called about Dad's doctor appointment, and I couldn't go home to my empty apartment and pretend everything was fine. I couldn't sit there and eat ice cream while watching sad movies like some kind of cliché. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and Alex saw something in her expression that he recognized. The same tired loneliness that he saw in his own mirror every morning. So, I drove around for 2 hours in the rain and somehow I ended up here, she said. Funny how that happens. Alex got up from his chair and walked to the kitchen without saying anything. Sometimes silence was better than words, especially when someone looked as fragile as Lily did right now. He'd learned that about her years ago, back when they first became friends in college. She needed space to breathe before she could really talk about what was bothering her. The kitchen was small, just big enough for one person to move around comfortably. He filled the electric kettle with water and plugged it in, the familiar routine giving his hands something to do while his mind tried to process having her here again. 6 months of learning to live without her, and now she was sitting on his couch like no time had passed at all. He opened the cabinet above the stove and found the chamomile tea she used to drink when she was stressed. He'd bought it out of habit a few weeks after she moved out, then felt stupid about it for days. Now he was glad he'd never thrown it away. While the water heated up, Alex glanced back at the living room. Lily had pulled her legs up under herself, on the couch, a position he'd seen 1,000 times before. She was looking around the apartment again and he wondered what she was thinking. Did it feel different to her? Smaller? Sadder? The truth was, not much had changed since she left. He'd thought about rearranging everything, maybe buying new furniture or painting the walls a different color. Something to make it feel less like the place they'd shared together. But every time he started to move something, he'd remember why they'd put it there in the first place, and he'd leave it alone. The kettle clicked off, and Alex poured hot water over the tea bags in 2 mismatched mugs. One was blue with a chip on the handle that Lily had made during their 2nd year together, when she'd accidentally knocked it against the sink. The other was plain white, nothing special about it except that it was the right size for her hands. He carried both mugs back to the living room and set hers on the coffee table in front of her. She looked up at him with surprise, like she'd forgotten he knew exactly what she needed when she was upset. Chamomile, she said, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. You still have it. I drink it sometimes, Alex lied, settling back into his chair with his own tea. The truth was he'd only bought it for her, and it had been sitting in that cabinet untouched for months. But some truths were too heavy for a night like this. Lily took a small sip and closed her eyes for a moment, like she was trying to absorb some calm from the warm liquid. When she opened them again, she looked a little steadier. I'm sorry about the interview, Alex said. I know how much you wanted that job. It's not just the job, Lily said, tucking a strand of damp hair behind her ear. I mean, it is, but it's everything else too. My sister keeps calling me every day about her wedding plans, and she wants me to give a speech at the reception. A speech about love and marriage and forever. She let out a bitter little laugh. I can't even figure out my own life, and she wants me to give advice about love. Alex remembered Lily's sister Katie from family gatherings over the years. She was 5 years younger than Lily, one of those people who seemed to have everything figured out by the time she turned 25. Engaged to her college boyfriend, perfect job at a law firm, house in the suburbs with a white picket fence. Everything that was supposed to make a person happy. And then there's my mom, Lily continued. She keeps asking when I'm going to settle down, when I'm going to give her grandchildren. She doesn't say it directly, but I know she's thinking it. Dad's getting older, his health isn't great, and she wants to see the family grow before. She trailed off, staring into her tea. How is he doing? Alex asked gently. He'd always liked Lily's father, a quiet man who worked with his hands and told terrible jokes at dinner parties. Better some days, worse others. The doctors say it's manageable, but you know how these things go. Nothing stays the same forever. Her voice got quieter. I used to think I had time to figure everything out. Time to decide what I wanted. Time to make mistakes and fix them. But watching him get older, watching everyone around me move forward, with their lives, I feel like I'm standing still. Alex wanted to reach out and touch her hand the way he used to when she got like this, but the space between them felt bigger now. Even though they were sitting in the same small room where they'd had hundreds of conversations just like this one. You're not standing still, he said instead. You're just on a different path than other people. There's nothing wrong with that. Is there, though? Lily looked at him directly. I'm 28, Alex. I'm living in a studio apartment with furniture from college, working a job that barely pays my bills, and I just bombed the one interview that could have changed everything. Most of my friends are married or engaged, or at least in serious relationships, and She gestured vaguely at herself. You're figuring it out, Alex finished. Just like everyone else, even if it doesn't look like it from the outside. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking their tea and listening to the rain against the windows. The storm seemed to be getting stronger, which meant Lily would probably be here for a while longer. Alex tried not to think about how that made him feel. I miss this, Lily said suddenly, her voice so quiet he almost didn't hear her over the rain. Just talking to someone who knows me, really knows me, not just the version of myself I show at work or to my family or to strangers at parties. Alex felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. I miss it too, he admitted. The rain kept falling harder as the night went on, turning into the kind of steady downpour that made the whole world feel smaller and quieter. Alex and Lily had moved through topics like old friends do, jumping from her job stress to his new project at work, from her sister's wedding to his mother's latest attempts to set him up with daughters of her friends from church. It felt natural in a way that surprised them both. The awkwardness from earlier had melted away somewhere between her second cup of tea and his story about accidentally setting off the fire alarm while trying to cook dinner last week. They were laughing now, really laughing, and Alex had forgotten how good it felt to make her smile, but he could see the tiredness creeping in around her eyes. Lily had always been someone who carried stress in her whole body, and tonight, she looked like she'd been carrying too much for too long. She kept rubbing her temples when she thought he wasn't looking, and her shoulders stayed tense even when she was laughing. I should probably head home, she said around 11, but there was no conviction in her voice. It's getting late and you probably have work tomorrow. I do, but it's not that important, Alex said, which was true. His job at the tech company was steady, but not the kind that required him to be sharp first thing in the morning. Besides, it's really coming down. Out there, maybe you should wait until it lets up a bit. They both looked toward the windows where rain was hitting the glass in sheets. The kind of rain that would soak you through in seconds, even with an umbrella. Lily's car was parked on the street, a good 50 feet from the building entrance. Haven't been sleeping well anyway, she said almost to herself. I keep waking up at 3 in the morning and then I just lie there thinking about all the things I need to do or should have done differently. It's like my brain won't turn off. Alex knew that feeling. He'd been having his own version of sleepless, nights lying in a bed that felt too big and too empty, listening to every small sound in the building and wondering if other people felt as alone as he did. You could stay here tonight, he said, the words coming out before he'd really thought them through. I mean, if you want. The couch is pretty comfortable, or I could take it and you could have the bed, like we used to do in college when one of us had a bad day. Lily looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. There was surprise there, but also something that looked like relief. Would that be weird? She asked. After everything? Alex considered the question seriously. Would it be weird? Probably. They weren't just old friends anymore. They were old friends who had tried to be something more and failed at it. People who had shared not just space but hopes and plans and quiet morning conversations about the future. People who had hurt each other without meaning to, just by wanting different things at different times. But looking at her now, tired and a little lost, Alex found he didn't care about weird. Maybe, he said honestly. But I think I'd rather have it be weird than have you drive home in this weather when you're exhausted. You don't have to take care of me, Lily said, but her voice was gentle, not defensive. I can handle a little rain. I know you can handle it, Alex said. You can handle anything, but maybe tonight you don't have to. Something passed between them then, an understanding that went deeper than words. This wasn't about rain or late hours or practical concerns about driving safety. This was about two people who had known each other when they were young and stupid and full of dreams, recognizing that they were both a little more tired and a little more careful now, but still the same people underneath all the layers they'd built up. Okay, Lily said simply. If you're sure it's okay. I'm sure, Alex said, and he meant it. The next 20 minutes had a strange, careful quality to them. They moved around each other in the small apartment like dancers who remembered the steps but weren't quite sure if they were supposed to be dancing together anymore. Alex found clean sheets for the bed and grabbed a spare toothbrush from the bathroom cabinet. Lily asked if she could borrow something to sleep in, and he gave her an old college t-shirt that used to be her favorite. I can't believe you still have this, she said, holding up the faded blue shirt with the name of their university across the front. I thought I'd lost it years ago. It was in my drawer, Alex said, not mentioning that he'd kept it on purpose, or that sometimes when he did laundry he'd catch himself being extra careful with it. Some things were better left unsaid. When Lily came out of the bathroom wearing the t-shirt and her jeans from earlier, she looked so much like the person he'd fallen in love with that Alex had to look away for a moment. But when he looked back, she was just Lily again, his friend who needed a safe place to sleep for one night. Thank you, she said, and he knew she meant for more than just the shirt or the place to stay. For letting me show up here, for not making it complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated, Alex said, though they both knew that wasn't entirely true. Everything between them was at least a little complicated now, but maybe that was okay. Maybe some complications were worth navigating. They stood there for a moment in the soft light from the bedside lamp. Two people who had shared so much history that they could communicate in glances and pauses. Finally, Lily smiled, the first really genuine smile he'd seen from her all evening. So, she said, are we really going to do this like we used to? Just sleep and not make it weird? We're going to try, Alex said. And if it gets weird, we'll figure it out in the morning. The apartment felt different with both of them in it again. Alex turned off the living room lights and checked that the front door was locked, small rituals that felt both familiar and strange. Lily was already in the bedroom, and he could hear her moving around quietly, probably trying to figure out which side of the bed to choose. When he walked into the bedroom, she was sitting on the edge of the bed looking uncertain. The t-shirt was big on her, falling almost to her knees, and her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She looked young and vulnerable in a way that made Alex's chest tighten. This feels weird, she admitted with a small laugh. Good weird, but still weird. Yeah, Alex agreed, grabbing his pajama pants from the dresser. But we've done weird before and survived it. He changed in the bathroom while she got settled under the covers. When he came back, she was lying on her side facing the wall, curled, up small like she was trying to take up as little space as possible. It was so different from how she used to sleep when they were together, spread out like she owned the whole bed, one arm usually flung over his chest. Alex climbed in on the other side, careful to stay on his edge of the mattress. The bed felt enormous with that careful space between them, bigger than it had ever felt when he was sleeping alone. The rain was still falling outside, a steady rhythm that should have been soothing, but somehow made everything feel more intense. For a few minutes they lay there in the darkness, both pretending to try to fall asleep. Alex could tell from her breathing that Lily was wide awake, probably staring at the wall and thinking the same things he was thinking. How strange it was to be here together. How natural it felt, despite everything. How careful they both had to be not to read too much into it. Alex? Lily's voice was soft in the darkness. Are you happy? The question caught him off guard. Not because it was too personal, but because it was so direct. Lily had always been good at cutting through small talk to get to the heart of things, but she usually took longer to work up to the big questions. That's a loaded question at midnight, he said, trying to buy himself time to think. I know, but I've been wondering about it for months. Are you happy with how things are now? With your job and your life and everything? Alex stared at the ceiling, considering how to answer. The honest truth was complicated. Some days he felt okay, even good. He liked his work well enough. He had friends who cared about him. He was learning to cook actual meals instead of living on takeout. But there was always something missing, a background sense of incompleteness that he'd learned to ignore but never quite gotten rid of. I'm getting there, he said finally. Some days are better than others. What about you? I thought I was, Lily said. For a while I thought I was doing great. I had my own place, I was dating other people, I convinced myself that I was moving forward. But then tonight happened, and I ended up here, and I realized I've just been pretending. She shifted on the bed, turning to face him in the darkness. Alex could barely make out her outline, but he could feel the weight of her attention. I keep comparing everything to what we had, she continued. Every conversation, every moment of feeling understood or cared for. It's not fair to anyone, especially not to me, but I can't seem to stop doing it. Alex felt something loosen in his chest, a knot he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. I do that too, he admitted. I went on a few dates, tried to meet new people, but nothing felt right. I kept thinking about how easy it used to be with us, how I never had to explain myself or pretend to be someone different. Do you think that means we made a mistake? Lily asked. Breaking up, I mean. Deciding we were better as friends. It was the question they'd both been dancing around for months. Maybe since the day she'd moved her things out of the apartment. Alex had asked himself the same thing hundreds of times, usually at 3 a.m. when his brain wouldn't shut up. I don't know, he said honestly. I think we made the best decision we could with what we knew then. We were fighting a lot, remember? About stupid things. About big things, too. We couldn't seem to talk about the future without one of us getting upset. We were scared, Lily said quietly. I was scared anyway. Everything felt so serious all of a sudden, like we had to decide the rest of our lives right then and there. Marriage and kids and mortgages and all of that. I wasn't ready, but I didn't know how to say that without it sounding like I didn't love you. I was scared too, Alex said. I thought if we didn't move forward, we'd be moving backward, like there was no middle ground where we could just be together and figure things out as we went. They were quiet for a while, processing the honesty of what they'd just shared with each other. Outside, the rain was starting to let up, but neither of them mentioned it. I miss talking to you like this, Lily said eventually. Real talking, not just the polite stuff we do when we run into each other at the coffee shop. Me too. I missed knowing what you're thinking about, what's bothering you or making you happy. I missed being the person you tell things to. You still are, she said softly. Tonight proved that. When everything fell apart today, you were the person I wanted to see. Alex felt his heart do that stupid jumping thing again, but this time he didn't try to ignore it. You're still that person for me too. Even when we're not talking, you're still the person I imagine telling things to. That's probably not healthy, Lily said with a small laugh. Probably not, Alex agreed. But maybe that's okay. Maybe some connections don't fit into neat categories. Alex woke up slowly, the way he always did on weekends, drifting between sleep and consciousness for several minutes before fully opening his eyes. The first thing he noticed was that he felt more rested than he had in weeks. The second thing he noticed was the weight of another person next to him. Lily was still asleep, curled up on her side facing him. Sometime during the night they had both migrated toward the center of the bed, and now there were only a few inches between them. Her hair had come loose from the bun and was spread across the pillow in dark waves. One of her hands was tucked under her cheek, and the other was resting on the space between them, palm up like she was offering something even in sleep. For a moment, Alex let himself just look at her. In the soft morning light coming through the curtains, she looked peaceful in a way he hadn't seen the night before. The worry lines around her eyes had smoothed out, and her breathing was deep and even. She looked like the Lily he remembered from lazy Saturday mornings when they had nowhere to be and nothing to prove to anyone. But even as he watched her sleep, Alex could feel the weight of the conversation they would need to have when she woke up. Last night had been honest in a way that felt both healing and dangerous. They had said things that couldn't be unsaid, admitted feelings that changed the shape of everything between them. Alex slipped out of bed carefully, trying not to disturb her. The apartment was quiet except for the sound of cars passing on the wet street outside. The storm had passed sometime during the night, leaving behind the clean, fresh smell that always followed heavy rain. In the kitchen, he started making coffee, another old routine that his hands remembered even when his brain was still catching up to the day. 2 mugs. Stronger than he usually made it because Lily always complained that his coffee was too weak. Sugar for her, nothing for him. While the coffee brewed, Alex stood at the window and watched the city wake up. People were already out walking, dogs and jogging, stepping carefully around puddles left from the storm. Everything looked washed clean and new, like the rain had given the whole world a fresh start. He heard movement from the bedroom and turned to see Lily padding into the kitchen, still wearing his old t-shirt but with her hair pulled back again. She looked a little shy, like she wasn't quite sure what the rules were for the morning after a night like theirs. "Good morning," she said softly. "Morning. Coffee's almost ready. You remembered how I like it?" "Some things you don't forget," Alex said, pouring coffee into both mugs and adding sugar to hers. They stood on opposite sides of the small kitchen, drinking their coffee and stealing glances at each other. The easy intimacy of the night before felt more fragile in the daylight, like something that might disappear if they examined it too closely. "I should probably get going soon," Lily said after a few minutes. "I have some errands to run and I'm sure you have things to do too." "Probably," Alex agreed, though the truth was he had nothing planned except grocery shopping and maybe doing some laundry. Weekend activities for a person who lived alone and had learned to structure his time around small, manageable tasks. But he could hear something in Lily's voice, a careful politeness that hadn't been there the night before. She was putting distance between them again, rebuilding the walls that had come down in the darkness. He understood the impulse. Morning light had a way of making nighttime honesty feel too raw, too exposed. "About last night?" Lily started, then stopped, looking down into her coffee mug like it might have answers. "What about it?" "I don't want you to think I came here with some kind of plan or expectation. I really was just having a bad day and ended up at your door. I don't want to complicate your life or make you feel like you owe me anything." Alex set down his mug and looked at her directly. "Do you think last night was a mistake?" "No," she said quickly, then paused. "But I don't know what it was either. I don't know what any of this means or where it leaves us." "Does it have to mean something specific?" Alex asked. "Can't it just be what it was? 2 people who care about each other sharing an honest conversation and a safe place to sleep?" Lily smiled for the first time that morning, a real smile that reached her eyes. "You always were better at living in the moment than I was. I'm the one who needs everything labeled and categorized." "Maybe that's not such a bad thing," Alex said. "Maybe we needed someone to think about the future when we were together. I was probably too careless about planning ahead. And maybe I was too focused on having everything figured out," Lily said. "Too worried about making the wrong choice to make any choice at all." They finished their coffee in comfortable silence, both of them processing what felt like a shift in understanding, not a solution exactly, but a new way of looking at the questions they'd been carrying around for months. When Lily went to get dressed, Alex cleaned up the kitchen and tried not to overthink what would happen next. Would they go back to awkward, coffee shop encounters and careful text messages? Would they try to be friends in some new way? Would they pretend this night had never happened? When she came back out, wearing her clothes from the day before but looking more put together, she paused by the door. "Thank you," she said, "for letting me stay, for listening, for not making it weird or complicated or more than it needed to be." "Thank you for trusting me enough to come here," Alex said. "For being honest about what you're going through. It felt good to really talk to you again." Lily hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward and hugged him quickly, the kind of hug that old friends give each other. Brief but genuine, warm but not too intimate. "I'll see you around," she said, opening the door. "Yeah," Alex said. "See you around." After she left, Alex stood in his quiet apartment and realized that something fundamental had shifted. Not everything was resolved between them. Maybe nothing was resolved in any traditional sense. But something had been acknowledged and accepted. They were who they were to each other, whatever that meant, and maybe that was enough for now.